Independence Square in Kiev. It bears the scars and the memorials of a conflict that has once again divided Ukraine. No one knows where this chapter will end, but it's just the latest in the nation's long and bloody history to explain today's conflict. It helps to understand the lessons of the past. The old Slavic word for Ukraine, meant borderland. And what we've got here is the modern borders of Ukraine coming in here and obviously taking it at the moment, Crimea. But in 1918, the situation was quite different. We had Austro-Hungary in the west of Ukraine and then eventually, after the First World War, the Soviet Ukraine. Whatever way you look at it, these are the people who are constantly stateless. But I have got a claim as a nation. The story of Ukraine is in part the story of Christianity in Europe. And this man Saint Vladimir captured in this statue outside the Ukrainian Institute in London. It has become a shrine to those killed in Independence Square. In 988 he brought Christianity to Kiev 101,025 years ago, and Kiev then was the capital of what is now sort of the larger post. Even Soviet Union. Moscow did not exist. Those remembered here join millions more who have died in Ukraine's conflict. This vast nation is a bridge between East and West and coveted by both conflict and blood is in the soil. As many as 10 million Ukrainians perished under Stalin's rule, starved in a famine caused by the forced collectivization of agriculture. This in a fertile land that became the breadbasket of Europe, decimated by Soviet rule. The Nazis brought terror and division. A decade later, when Hitler ordered German troops into Ukraine en route to Russia. In 1941 they encircled Kiev. 600,000 men were killed or captured, others fought with the Nazis, causing divisions that linger to this day. According to Russian estimates, by the end of the war, 1.6 million soldiers had died in Ukraine and more than 5 million civilians. Ukraine finally gained full independence from the Soviet Union in 1991. And with it, the trappings of nationhood like embassies around the world, including this one here in London. But independence has not brought settled democracy. In 23 years on, the country is in the grip of its second revolution. The new nation had a difficult birth. Its soldiers still wore Soviet uniforms as they trained to defend their country. And the economy struggled with fuel and food in short supply. Despite this, Ukraine remained a huge nuclear power. When Ukraine became an independent state, it had the third largest nuclear arsenal in the world. Its nuclear arsenal was bigger than that of France, the United Kingdom and China combined. It was massive. Ukraine gave it up voluntarily in exchange for assuring from the United States, from the UK and from Russia that its territorial integrity will be preserved. So one of the big issues we are seeing now really is that the assurances that were made aren't being adhered to. The deal was signed by America, Russia and Ukraine. But stability at home has remained elusive in 2004. This prompted the Orange Revolution following a rigged election. Viktor Yanukovych was removed without a shot being fired. Said nationwide protests and a second election. Viktor Yushchenko was installed in his place. His disfigured face bore the scars of the campaign, which many believe were caused by poisoning. In 2010, Yanukovych won back the presidency. This election was cleaner, but his administration was not. Yulia Tymoshenko, defeated in the election, was jailed for abuse of power. The charge is widely viewed as politically motivated. Last month, Yanukovych was overthrown for a second time, but this time, there was blood. The consequences for Ukraine are uncertain. But the pattern is way familiar. There's an old Ukrainian joke from the British diaspora that if you put 4 Ukrainians into a cellar for 6 months, they emerge with 5 political parties and 6 churches. And I think it suggests that this is still not a historically settled territory in this most troubled state. History keeps repeating itself. Paul Kelso, Sky News.